In this episode, I answer what advice would I give to my 20-year-old self, how do I form healthy habits, and what do you do when your weight loss has stalled?
You ask questions and we'll answer them. This is the Ask DVCC show.
Hey, this is Mark from the DVCC and welcome to the Ask DVCC show. So, I'm going to be answering some questions that we've had tweeted, emailed, Facebook commented and Instagram commented, and also a Snapchat or two question. So if you want to get your question answered on the show, just use any one of those mediums and we'll get them answered straight for you. I've got 4 here and I've got them all written down. The first one.
Jane asked, how do you get back on your diet after falling off the wagon?
This is quite a common question and quite a common problem. A lot of people think that when they've had a bad meal or they've gone out and drunk alcohol that they didn't necessarily intend to do, they've fallen off the wagon and everything is broken. They've lost all of their gains, all their losses, all of the things that they've achieved in the last months, 2 months, weeks, or whatever it is, because they've fallen off the wagon. Now, what you must remember is there is no wagon. There is simply what you did yesterday and what you did today and then what you're going to be doing in the future. How I like to think about it is you're building a house. So changing your nutrition habits, changing your exercise habits are basically the bricks one by one towards building a house, which is your overall health. So when you're building a house, if you put in a wrong brick, it doesn't cause the whole thing to fall down. Simply a bad brick. All you need to do is replace it and build on top of it again. You're not falling off a wagon. It's not like you're in a car and you've fallen off, you can't get back on. You are simply replacing that bad brick or that meal with a good one. So the main thing we always stress at the DVCC is to focus on the next thing that you can control. So the next meal that you can have, the next good bit of water or water with lemon that you can have, the next thing that you can do to get yourself back on building towards your better future, your healthier, better future, all of your goals. So one weekend, one meal, even 1 week is not going to destroy everything that you've worked hard towards. You might put on a bit of fat, but that doesn't matter because you can simply get back into the swing of things with your next meal, your next drink, your next healthy habit. There is no wagon to fall back off or on, just simply you're building the habits that are going to stand you in good stead for the rest of your life. Alright, I hope that answers that question. Moving on.
Rob asked, how do I change my bad habits?
This is quite an interesting one because we don't believe in removing things from people. It's a bit of a negative mindset if you're thinking about taking things away from someone. Naturally, if you take something away from a child, you notice that they cry, right? That's been bred into us from being a baby all the way through to adults. We don't like having things taken away from us. So what we focus on at the DVCC is adding things to your day, to your habits. Now, we strategically add habits to our clients' lives that we know in the long run will mean that they're going to reduce their bad habits without them even noticing. So, a good example is a lot of people, I've had this a fair few times where clients may say, I drink a lot of milky tea and I want to stop drinking my milky tea because I know it's not great for me. I chuck in 6 sugars every time. There has been that on occasion, 6 sugars. It's a lot of sugar. But instead of saying, right, cut that down, what we say is, okay, why don't you focus on drinking 3 litres of water a day, which is the kind of average amount that we suggest. Focus on drinking that 3 litres each and every day. Don't worry about your tea, don't worry about bringing that down or getting rid of it. Just focus on drinking those 3 litres a day. And what we find in the long run, these same people gradually reduce their tea or whatever it is without actually realizing it. They're not feeling like they're having something taken away, but simply by adding in a healthy habit, they naturally reduce the bad ones. So we're not very keen on taking things away from people. We'd much rather add in a healthy habit, a healthy routine into their lives, which in the long run will mean that their bad habits, if there are such things, and their not so great habits would be automatically removed from their lives without them even realising, so they don't feel like they've lost anything. That question we get asked a lot, so that's a simple way of looking at it. Think about what you can add instead of what you can take away. Okay, the next question, and this is from Josie. Here's quite an interesting one.
Josie asked, what advice would you give to your 22-year-old self?
This is obviously individual to each person, but for me personally, my 22-year-old self feels like a long time ago. I was playing rugby at the time. I was only focused on exercise and training, so I was very fortunate in that aspect. Probably what I would say to my 22-year-old self is understand that all of your injuries that you're getting now and that you're playing through and you're thinking that you're superhuman and not doing stretching, not doing any rehabilitation will affect you in the long run. So I played through a fair few injuries and then ended up having to have operations, or an operation specifically, when I was around about 30. And that could have been stopped had I been a bit more mature about it and not trained the very next day after actually dislocating my shoulder, which was very, very silly. But it's actually one of the reasons at the DVCC we developed the rehab protocols, because our experience with rugby and all of the team's experience with injuries, you really want to attack injuries with rehabilitation. So rather than thinking they're going to go away and ignoring them and thinking that they'll all be fine, you want to attack them with specific rehabilitation protocols which will fix you and allow you in the long run to have much more pain-free, positive and better results from your ongoing training. So that's probably what I would take from my 20-year-old self, or tell my 22-year-old self. Now I try and tell all the youngsters this, all the young rugby guys, and they probably listen as much as I would have listened. But yeah, that's what I would tell my 22-year-old self. Right, next question.
Teresa asked, what's the number one thing you suggest to do when your weight loss stalls?
This is a pretty good one, because if anyone has tried to lose weight or put on muscle or try to get any results really from exercise, they'll realise it's not linear. You don't lose weight forever and you don't gain muscle forever. It's always ups and downs, and oftentimes you will go gradually down. If you're saying you're losing weight, you're going gradually down and then it will stall. And the thing that we always suggest at the DVCC first and foremost is to start tracking what you're doing. So you want to start tracking what you're eating. And I don't mean being really, over the top, and you're not a bodybuilder or anything, but you're specifically tracking for a period of time just to understand exactly what you're doing, because oftentimes things that you don't even reference the things that you're doing. You might be, having an extra bottle of wine a week without really realizing it. It's just kind of crept in and you haven't kind of thought about it. But by writing things down, you become a lot more accountable to yourself, but a lot more intentional about things. So seeing it in black and white is a lot easier to analyze potentially what changes you need to make or need to be made for you to carry on making the results that you're wanting to make. So that's always number one. Always track what you're doing, and from there all of your results can be dictated. So I think we all understand as children you track, or your teachers track when you go into normal everyday life, business. Everything's tracked. The same is important for fitness and health. If you're not tracking, it's very hard, number one, to see how far you've come, but number two, see where you could improve on. So all of our clients get their results tracked on an online portal where they can see graphs of weight loss and muscle gain and all different things. It's very important because often, like I say, it's as a positive thing, you forget actually what you've achieved, but on the flip side, you forget necessarily what you're doing. So by tracking what you're doing, it's a lot easier to see what improvements you can make. Hope that answers that question. So the last question, quite an interesting one.
Andrew asked, how do you handle passive-aggressive friends who comment on your healthy eating or drinking?
I'll give you my experience with this. Now, I'm obviously in a relatively fortunate position that exercise has kind of always been my way of life, and it was my profession from early on, and it's been something I've always focused on throughout my whole life. So even then I still had to undergo the whole, in rugby culture, it was still a fair bit of drinking, a fair bit of KFCs after nights out, that type of thing. And Stephen and I were always different. All of the team are eat generally different from, potentially their average comrades from the same age. But what I found was when people were making comments, and the same is still true, and when someone's making a comment to you about how you're eating healthily or whatever, why don't you have this drink, why don't you have fries without, live a little, all those type of comments. Normally it's a reflection on themselves rather than you. So oftentimes I found that it's actually people are jealous of the fact that you have the strength, willpower to be a little bit different, buck the trend a little bit. They wish that they could forego that drink of alcohol, forego that bad meal. So think of it more of a reflection of them rather than you. That's the first thing I'd say. And then the second thing I would say is, always think long term. Think about, you're never eating healthily for this meal, just for this meal right now. You're thinking it's about your future. So you're doing that for your future results, or your future, how you're going to feel in 10 years' time, 5 years' time. In fact, you're going to be healthier for longer. You're not doing it for the specific moment right now, because obviously eating healthily right now is not going to make a tremendous difference in this moment. But accumulatively, over months, over years, it's going to make life and a whole world of difference for you. So try and reference it to your longer term goals and your longer term life rather than specifically right now. Also, you'll find that if you stick at something long enough, your friends get bored and they'll be asking you for advice soon enough on how to eat healthily and how to improve their whatever they want to improve. So like I say, number one, reflection on them. Number two, think about your bigger, longer term goals. Your reason for doing something. It's not to lose weight this second, it's to, be able to run around with your children, to be healthier, to be able to inspire your young daughters, whatever it is. Think about that, the longer term answer rather than specific here and there now. And also just realise a couple of years' time or years' time, your friend will be asking you for some advice and they will also be the ones eating healthily. All right, so this is Mark from the DVCC. So, question of the day. What do you think is the number one habit that you have that is allowing you to be healthy? Comment in the comment box below and then we'll be able to interact.